Welcome in everyone and welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We are at the stroke of midnight. I guess it's good morning. Good morning, Sunday morning, October 6th. We just had a hell of a Saturday, October 5th. If you're a Razorback fan, we're going to start this out. This is obviously a Midnight Madness special I'm doing tonight to talk basketball recruiting. I think it's probably the most important visit weekend of the John Calipari era, the Hogfather era at Arkansas. And they've had some pretty big success already in recruiting and some of the visit weekends, but I think this one's a little bit special, and I'm going to go through all of it and where I think things stand. We're going to get to that in a minute, but the first thing I want to say is congratulations to Sam Pittman, Bobby Petrino, Travis Williams, and everyone who's a Razorback in the entire world or universe. Arkansas needed that one in football. You had the visitors in the house, big time national top 10 five-star rated guys on campus and at Razorback Stadium to see this big win. Massive, massive. I'm going to get to that. Do you think Meleek commits soon? We're going to answer these questions, but look, and I appreciate you asking. But congratulations to the football program on that big come from behind win. Arkansas was down to its second string quarterback, second string running back, second string kicker. Didn't matter. Best team won. Arkansas could be undefeated right now if not for some self-inflicted wins and turnovers in a couple of games. They always say your record is what it tells you who you are. I think Arkansas is probably one of the best 4-2 teams I've seen in terms of on both sides of the ball. Things I think they've proven. I think they've been the best team in all of these games, but they've had some, again, self-inflicted wins that led to a couple of really close losses. But tonight you get to celebrate a victory, and I think it was important for several reasons. Again, you had two basketball recruits in the house as part of that excitement. And I want to get right to it. We knew that Meleek Thomas, well, I say we knew, he had postponed two previous visits. We were expecting him in for this one, and sure enough, he made it to campus. National number 7 five-star rated player. When you look at it, we've talked about it so much. Out of Pittsburgh, overtime elite this year. To me, this guy has as much it factor and swagger as anybody I've seen in covering basketball. Going all the way back to May when I met him in person. Covered him in Kansas City at the Nike EYBL circuit, interviewed him, put that video out at the time, have talked a lot about him, have had some exchanges with him back and forth via text messaging all these months in this recruitment. And the big thing was, can you get Meleek Thomas on campus? He visited UConn back in June. He bypassed the Arkansas visit a few days later, late June, and then it was kind of thought off to the races for UConn. This is going to be a Huskies commitment. That didn't happen, and he scheduled for Arkansas in mid-September, the lone football weekend in Fayetteville against Alabama Birmingham. Then he moved that out. We talked about it, bumped that out a little bit to the current weekend. And so, it's one of those, is it three strikes you're out? Is it third time's the charm? Well, it turns out it's third time's the charm. Now, what we didn't know, we thought we knew he would finally make it to campus, and he did. But what we probably didn't see coming was that Darius Acuff Jr., Arkansas's lone pledge so far in the class of 2025, still the only national top 10 rated player in the country to be committed to a school right now. Some players right outside the top 10 when you look at it that have committed, but he's the lone guy ranked number 5. So you got Meleek Thomas, 7th ranked guy, Darius Acuff Jr., 5th ranked, 6'2", 6'3" lead guard out of Detroit, also playing at an independent school at IMG Academy in Florida. But you have Acuff on campus. That was kind of the surprise. Both players today on their Instagram initially sent out, the thumbnail with the, here we are, in Fayetteville, and they were in the Performance Center, certainly there to take in Arkansas practice earlier in the day before going to Reynolds Razorback Stadium. So to me, the impact of this visit with Acuff tells me a lot more than what I already thought about Arkansas's chance with Meleek Thomas. And then I've got a little bit of intel for you. I think it's important. By the way, if you haven't been on my Twitter page yet, or if you haven't gone over to HogvilleNET to the basketball recruiting forum, I've got several photos that I've put out of Meleek Thomas and Acuff together at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. I got those right before kickoff, tweeted those out, posted links to those photos over at HogvilleNET. If you haven't seen it, my Twitter is at ARHoopscoop. But some pretty good stuff, and I'll just say it. I'm just going to go out and say this now. Because I've been saying it. I said if Meleek Thomas actually made it to campus, if he consummated the visit as expected, that I put Arkansas in the driver's seat. I already have one source. I've told you this. I've repeated it. We're going to say it again. That's told me, regardless of when he gets on campus, once he gets there, Arkansas is the team to beat. Arkansas is going to get him when the dust settles. And that's what I have one source has been telling me that for a while. I've shared it here. I've had other people I talked to, other sources that weren't so sure. I've kind of been in that camp only because he's already missed a couple of visits as planned. And so you see this in recruiting, and sometimes it never happens. But the third time was the charm. I mentioned those photos. You see both Acuff and Meleek Thomas in Razorback t-shirts, Razorback, athletics t-shirts. And so that was neat. It doesn't necessarily signify a commitment, but it was good to see that, see both players here together. And I'm just going to run through a lot of stuff I think that matters here. But just getting back to it with Meleek Thomas, I think I've been saying for a while, if he actually makes it on campus, advantage Calipari. Now I think Arkansas is in the driver's seat. Well, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. That's where things are. Arkansas is in the driver's seat now. The little bit of intel I'm going to share with you before I start chopping up what I think is significant, how this thing may play out. The one bit of intel is pretty huge in my opinion. I'm told that this visit's not only going extremely well, but it might be exceeding some expectations. And I think Arkansas was already in a great spot with Meleek Thomas. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I do not have any word about a private or silent commit to this point. That could happen this weekend. It's possible. The visit's going really well, and I think, the atmosphere at the game tonight and the outcome and those things can't do anything but help, maybe icing on the cake. But I think regardless of that, I think Arkansas is in the driver's seat here with Meleek Thomas. But there's some things to think about, a couple of things with that. But I just want to repeat one more time. The information I'm getting back is this visit's going extremely well and maybe better than even expected. And they thought this was going to end up being a good visit. So maybe exceeding some expectations there. I think that's a big deal. I want to repeat one more time. I do not have anything solid on a private commitment, although I think we're getting to a stage now with the early period coming up. Both Acuff and Meleek Thomas are expected to sign early. That things are going to start moving fairly quickly. What does the timeline look on that? Could there be a private commitment this weekend and not a public commitment for a while? I don't know about that, but I do know that just last week we were on, I think just a few days ago, we were, Saturday night, Sunday morning here. We were on Wednesday. And at that time I talked about, maybe Kansas State getting a visit, and it was, if not possible, likely that he was going to visit there, but I didn't have a date for that. And after we put that segment out, found the date, and it was later this month. So the weekend of October 25th through 27th, Meleek Thomas has a scheduled visit to Kansas State. That's something to pay attention to and take seriously until he doesn't go. So is this a situation where Meleek Thomas's visit's going so well at Arkansas that he determines he's going to go ahead and get it done and not take another visit? Or he's been recruited really hard, he said, from the beginning by that staff over there, and that coaching staff, and had some reasons why he wanted to, and had them in his final 7 and wanted to take a visit. Either way that plays out, I don't think it's necessarily something to worry about. I think you've got maybe two factors here. The fact that he still does have another visit. We just mentioned it. By the way, he did not go to Alabama last weekend as planned. He skipped that one. We talked about that already. I mean, at this point, I'll be surprised if he reschedules that, but you never know. But the Kansas State visit, we'll see what happens there. But I think the other thing is, obviously NIL plays a big deal on these level of players, these top 10 rated 5 stars. And I think that's something you pay attention to, because if he is going to take another visit, or if he adds any more to it, you pay attention to, is there some kind of an end game in terms of back and forth on raising antes and where do things stand with NIL? I think Arkansas, as well as Arkansas is doing an NIL since Calipari came on, I think there are limits to what they're willing to do. And so I only throw that in as a caveat. It doesn't mean at the end of the day, Arkansas won't be the highest bidder anyway. I'm just saying, if it becomes one of those things, I think there are reasonable caps that Arkansas will have for anybody. So I'm throwing that out there as how, something could upset the apple cart. But right now, I think Arkansas, if it wasn't in the lead already, getting him on campus, I think not only puts Arkansas in the driver's seat, but my feeling and impression now is Meleek Thomas will be an Arkansas Razorback. That's my feeling. Again, one more time, I'm going to repeat, I don't have any kind of intel or source information that he's already a private or silent commitment, although it would not surprise me at all if that happens as early as this weekend or soon. And again, remember Darius Acuff, he visited Arkansas way back in May, back on campus this weekend. Guess what he did? His final visit was to UConn. He took a visit to UConn in June and still committed to Arkansas. It was soon after that UConn visit. I think a couple of weeks later, when I reported to you guys, I came on to one of these segments and said, "Look, he is a private commit now. That's been done. He's a silent commit, private commit." And then it was a couple of weeks later when after Peach Jam was over, I told you, I signaled that was probably when it was going to be shortly after that. Sure enough, that's when he came off the board. But his last visit technically was to UConn. Both of these players have visited UConn. You know, they don't have exact identical final 5, 6, 7 schools on their list. Of course, Acuff is already committed to Arkansas now. There's not a list now, but when you looked at his list, the one common school that both players have visited to this point was UConn. And so we'll see. You know, I think UConn's out of the picture now. I don't rule it out 100%, but UConn just picked up another similar positions type player in Darius Adams just a few days ago, another top 20 rated 5-star. Braylon Mullins is another guy there in the running for here at the end that they really are really trying to close hard on. Another perimeter guy, a perimeter shooter, a 2 or a 3. So I think Meleek Thomas now. I think Arkansas again is to me is in the lead here. I'm with the one. I'm not quite as convinced as the one source I have that says no matter what happens, once he visits Arkansas, doesn't matter elsewhere else he goes. When the dust settles, he's going to be a Razorback. I'm right, almost right there. I mean, I'm never go 100% absolute on anything. I'm very close. I'm getting close to that. All right. So having said that, there are several things I like about the fact that Acuff is here as well. I think part of the job here for Calipari is to not only tell a player, here's how you guys are going to complement each other, but to encourage the recruit that's uncommitted by showing him, hey, this guy's coming here to make you a priority as well. He wants to play with you. We're going to explain how this is going to work together. I've said for the longest time, you guys know this, way back when it looked like Meleek Thomas might end up at UConn, that's what the conventional thinking was. I said these guys would actually complement each other. There's a lot of top 10, 15, 20 rated guards, and a lot of them are too similar position-wise to maybe want to knock heads at the same place. And I felt like as good as Darius Acuff is as more of a scoring point guard than a facilitator, he's still a good enough facilitator and decision maker and table setter for others. And he's had so much success in a team setting with Team USA basketball and some of the other things. Just watching him, I thought this is a perfect match and a complementary piece to each other. I say perfect. Okay, that's absolute. Close to looking like these guys could really do some damage together and help each other and not, not be one of those failed things where they're too similar for it to work. And plus, Calipari's got a great track record, if they even were similar position-wise, to make it work. But having said that, I think these are two great complementary pieces. You've got Acuff at the 5th ranked player in the country at 6'2", 6'3" point guard. Meleek Thomas, 6'4", with his length. He and bounce. He to me sometimes plays a little longer and taller, it seems to me, than what he's listed at. So I think he's a natural fit at the 2, an elite 2, can help you on the wing as a 3 at some point as he adds strength. But I think these guys would not only complement each other, but as the 5th rated player and the 7th rated player, you've effectively, if you get Meleek Thomas committed and on board, you've already locked up. Guys, I keep saying this. You have locked up the number 1 recruiting class for the backcourt in the class of 2025, which I've said over and over again is the best class in a while. Especially when you look at the top 20-ish players. I think it's the best recruiting class in a while. I think that's going to show up and be proven out, not only when we see these players, then their 1 year of college or whatever they decide to do, and then the draft that they're eligible for a year later. But I just think if Arkansas gets 2 of these top 7 rated players in the country and their backcourt complementary pieces, Arkansas has locked up the number 1 backcourt in the country. And if it happens, I think it's going to happen early with both guys. And so you've done all that work by November. You're John Calipari. This is what you do. You just moved the headquarters. And now, as a head coach, you have solidified the idea that all you did was move the headquarters. You've sent a message out to everybody, all the recruiters in the country. Yeah, well, okay, I moved to Arkansas, but we're doing what we do. And so I think to some degree they've already proven that point with the recruiting they did to build this first roster. And then what he did, getting Darius Acuff Jr. off the board before any program had a top-rated player, and now you put a Meleek Thomas with that. If it happens, I think Arkansas's well in the lead here. That's my opinion. Again, things in recruiting change. NIL will be part of that process, but I think Arkansas is in the lead, and it's very encouraging to hear that his visit's going, maybe better than even expected, exceeding some expectations. I'm hearing it's going really well. So I think that's good news. I think the other thing is with Calipari, what do you have here? We knew Tyler Eulis was going to be added, but he had work to do to get that final fifth spot on that staff, and he did it, and he's here. And Calipari's talking about how valuable he's going to be, not only as an on-court assistant and on-the-road recruiter, as that fifth and final assistant on the staff, but all his playing experience and how Calipari speaks about him being a coach on the floor. And you've got Ronnie Brewer Jr. Even though he's got a different role now in terms of he's not technically an assistant coach, you see a ton of photos coming out from practices, and he's always on the court. He's there. He's a big part of it. Calipari spoke highly of him in this recent press conference. Why this is important is these are two guys that are relatable to younger guys, and they've got experience that they can help share and help guys get better and explain what works and what doesn't work in this league. And these are guys, Ronnie Brewer Jr., a lottery pick and a pro, Tyler Eulis, due to injuries and things, pro career didn't work out, but still both of them were all SEC guys. So I think when you bring in visitors like this weekend, and you look around the country and you see teams bringing in multiple high caliber visitors, typically they're not among guys that are committed. You had only two. Calipari does a little bit differently. He's zeroing it in. It's going to be a small, he says, 3 or 4 at most. You've got one on board. You brought him in with a guy that you hope is his backcourt mate. I think that helps. I think that helps sell this idea. I think the track record that Calipari has, getting guys to the NBA, getting them, preferred draft picks for the most part, and then all the max contracts and all the money his guys have made, it's second to none. It's a huge selling point. You put him around guys like Tyler Eulis and Ronnie Brewer on the visit, the entire staff, Kenny Payne, all their guys that have success developing players. And so I think it's a win all around by everything you're showing them and these people, more than just Calipari, that they're having these experiences with. Not only is he there with Acuff, but they're getting to see, when they go to practice, they're getting to see another McDonald's All-American in Boogie Fland, McDonald's All-American Cotter Knox, another 5-star, and Billy Richmond. And they're all backcourt players or wings. So there's this idea that Calipari just keeps on keeping on. All right. So as soon as the Meleek Thomas visit was consummated and people actually knew he was on campus, I was looking on social media, and I saw a lot of people trying to ask about comparisons and say, well, I saw one comparison thrown out there, the backcourt of the same class, De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk, in-state guy, and how good those guys were at Kentucky. They certainly were. I think that those, as freshmen before they went into the NBA draft, I think that team actually went to an Elite Eight that year. I think that was probably the best finish Calipari's had in a while, or maybe the best finish he's had since then. But they were I saw people trying to make comparisons whether these two, if Meleek Thomas comes to Arkansas, would be in the same kind of breath. And I think about this a little bit differently. Because that was, even though that wasn't that many years ago, it was a different era of basketball. The transfer portal was not nearly as important, and Calipari at that point was loading up on freshmen. Somebody was going to be good because he loaded up on enough where most of them, even if they didn't perform well, were still going to get drafted. It's different now. He's only taken 3 or 4. You've got to get these guys to blend in and have chemistry with older players. Some of them are good players coming from other places, and you got to do all that. I think the best comparison to make right now for Calipari, talking to any recruits, he can do all that. He can go back in time and bring up Fox and Monk and other guys. That's fine. I'm sure he will. But I think the best proof in the pudding is, what have you done lately in this era of transfer portal? His last Kentucky team had 2 guards, 2 freshman guards last year come out and get drafted in the lottery. One going 3rd overall, and Reed Shepard, and Rob Dillingham going 8th overall. Those guys had to play with a veteran scoring guard who was good with the ball, and Antonio Reeves. What did he do? He got drafted in the mid-second round. They had 3 backcourt players drafted. DJ Wagner, who's on this Arkansas team, another player these guys get to soak up on this visit, was a McDonald's All-American, a top 10 rated 5-star, and probably the only reason why he wasn't a one and done is because he sustained an injury that slowed down his progress. Even though he was a solid player as a lead guard and a true freshman, there's more he can do to help his draft status. And so it was good for him to come back, but he's going to be a solid college player. So you've got all these different angles, and I think recency and selling players on, hey, man, not only are we going to get you the right exposure, and development, but you're going to have a chance to win. I know people want to point to the postseason, but look at what all that youth in the backcourt did last year. A Kentucky team that was consistently ranked all year, finished only one game out of first place in the SEC, and had some big moments and big wins, and those guys played on big stages. Yes, the NCAA tournament was a disaster, one and out. But there's so much more that you can sell these guys, and I think at the end of the day, all these young players want to get to the next level and play in the NBA, get drafted, be one and dones if they can when they're that highly ranked, and the resume is just too good with Calipari. And he's got all the past experiences, even in the postseason, where it's not impossible to think he can get back there, because remember, he's drilling down how many freshmen he takes. And he's going to surround those guys with older players that can get it done. Look at this team right now. Nelly Davis, Jonas Adu, some of the players he brought from Kentucky have already college experience. You're going to see Boogie Fland and Carter Knox and Billy Richmond get their opportunities, get their chances. I think two things. One is you're not taking as many freshmen, but you're also keeping your total two-deep rotation at 8 or 9 guys. These young players coming out of high school got to be licking their chops because they know they're going to be in that group. They know they're going to be among the players getting minutes. And so I see it as win-win with everything Calipari did this weekend, having Darius Acuff Jr. there, all the pieces around Calipari on his staff and on this team. And there are multiple guys, let's face it, on this Arkansas team right now that are, probably going to be going pro after this season. I would assume and expect there'd be several. Thank you, Nelly. 25th. So I'm getting some comments on here as usual. I'm not very good getting to them. Thank you again for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live, my Midnight Madness special. Let's go ahead and ask you to do it. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe, like, share the content. If you like it, we love bringing it. So I think, again, making player comparisons is great, getting back to that. But I'm thinking more about the business of comparing it to very much recency. Last year, what that Kentucky team looked like, the accomplishments that team had before March, and then what guys were able to do getting in the draft. I mean, Rob Dillingham, speaking of the 8th pick, we saw Reed Sheppard just light stuff up in Summer League. That's not the NBA yet. A lot of guys will do great in that and then take a while or bust later. You don't ever know. But Rob Dillingham in a preseason game just yesterday, the NBA's preseason started yesterday, and Dillingham with the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think, had 21 points off the bench. So these guys not only were drafted as lottery picks, they're already starting to show that they belong. And, again, these are small sample sizes, but it's good that these things are happening because they're talking points when you're recruiting a young man when he's on campus. By the time, if Meleek Thomas follows his plan and commits and signs early somewhere, he'll be done by November before he'll ever know what the final stories is on some of these other guys that just had success at Kentucky. But for a lot of them, he sees a long trail of guys getting max contracts and maximizing what they were able to take from Kentucky in 1 year or two, and then how it helped them translate it to the next level and make the most of that. To me, it blows me away because we've seen this for so many years from afar, being in the SEC, watching Calipari work, and now you're having it here. And even though you're used to it because he's been this kind of coach, when it's what you're focused on, laser focused on, because now he's your coach, it sure makes it interesting and fascinating and exciting, honestly. And then, you don't have to go very far. I'm going to only bring this up to say Arkansas has a program. It's not like Calipari's trying to, polish something that's been ugly and ride the wave of his good name. I mean, Arkansas is a strong program historically. You go back to Arkansas's 2022 class under the previous coaching regime, 3 one-and-dones, 3 5-star players in that. Another player that didn't get drafted but doing pretty well, and Ricky Council IV. Then you had another McDonald's All-American in the next recruiting class, 2023. And Bayfall, he's gone from the program. Bad year last year for the program. Coaching change. But Arkansas, Acuff Jr. is going to be a McDonald's All-American. Meleek Thomas is going to be one. Arkansas's, and then you had 2 in this recruiting class again. We mentioned it, Boogie Fland and Carter Knox. I mean, Arkansas is getting some continuity with getting multiple 5-stars and McDonald's All-Americans going. But Calipari will be the ultimate at that. Again, it was kind of hit and miss before. This will be every year. And so now we're going through these processes. This visit weekend, again, you got this is the first multiple player visit weekend for just high school guys that Arkansas's had. And it's one guy who's already committed. So again, I think fans that like to see the new shiny toy they don't have, I think this was huge in doing it this way. And I think it's going to help land Meleek Thomas. I think it's another feather in Arkansas's cap. Again, I won't go as far as to say, because I don't know this. I don't know that there's a private or silent commit at this point. That could happen anytime soon. I could hear of it, but I am hearing this visit's going extremely well and is exceeding expectations. I want to get back to Meleek Thomas a little bit. I mentioned the it factor. I mentioned his, he's got that swagger. He's got that alpha mentality as a scorer. He's a guy I think will be an elite two guard, can play on the wing, but he can actually play on the ball. This is what Kentucky did last year. I'm going to go back to it. Rob Dillingham had stretches of games where he was running offense in two-man game because he's too good not to utilize some of that. Same with Rob Dillingham. Same with DJ Wagner. Same with Reed Shepard. I remember in the two Arkansas games, it was a grind game in Fayetteville the first time they met last year. Kentucky won a close game. It was 63-57. It was an ugly game. Antonio Reeves struggled for a while. Reed Shepard didn't have a big first half. He played off the bench. In the second half, Reeves started getting going, but what I really noticed is they ran a lot of offense through Reed Shepard. And on that, in that game, in that style of game, and in that particular setting, it was Reed Shepard. I talked about it at the time in the post game and probably wrote about it in my article. It was Reed Shepard who found his shot a little bit, but he was setting guys up. He was putting the ball on the deck when he's run off the three line. He was kicking the ball out. He really started making things work a little bit in an ugly game. Fast forward to later in the year, Arkansas gave up on defense and basically tried to be an offensive team at that point. Nothing was working. Went into Rupp, and it was another close game, and it was scored in the hundreds. And you saw at different times Antonio Reeves. There was a time where Rob Dillingham took the game over. DJ Wagner hit 4 threes and hit a 19-point. I mean, so the idea is just in the recent past, we see how things can work and how Calipari can spark that. And a Meleek Thomas to me is a guy that can play on the ball, similar to an Antonio Reeves, trying to patch this together and explain why it matters. This is how you sell it. You're like, look, you guys are going to play together, complement each other, but there will be times where Meleek Thomas will be running our offense. You talk about out high on the floor, two-man game, explosive player, smart player, a guy that can shoot and score, smooth operator. He's gonna pick and choose in those situations. Both guys will be able to do that. Whereas I see one guy as a primary handler and the other guy not a primary handler, there will be a role for him to have some primary ball duties in certain matchups, game critical situations, and two-man game, or any scenario that you want to utilize all of his talent. And so I see Meleek Thomas as a guy that'll be able to do that. Similarly, like I see a Boogie Fland and a DJ Wagner being able to do enough stuff that there might be times we see them on the court together. I think even more so, though, Acuff and Meleek Thomas seem like a fit to be able to play together a lot. And again, you could actually turn the ball over to I think, Meleek Thomas as he continues to progress and run some stuff through him. But here, this is a fearless guy. He's an above-the-rim dunker. He doesn't care if someone challenges him. He doesn't look all that big, but he's long and bouncy. And he just, I watched him play multiple times in person. And once he gets a step or just determines he's going to get downhill, he attacks. And he can pull up from three. All players, in my opinion, that are as good as these guys are offensively, still are going to have to learn how to play off the ball. Even as a lead guard, you got to learn how to move off the ball when it's not in your hands. And you're going to have to learn how to move off the ball to get open, to make yourself a good receiver now for a pass that puts you in a good spot to maybe score or help make the next pass for an easy score. So all talented players, I don't care how good you are, have to learn some of the nuance of that stuff the more you move up. But I think with a Meleek Thomas, again, because of his fearlessness and his passion for the game, he plays with a certain passion and swagger. I think putting him with a guy like Acuff makes so much sense in so many ways. And both of those guys are legitimate weapons, man. I mean, I just, I look at that, I'm like, wow, it just blows me away, because not only on paper will they be the top backcourt in the country, but I think from what I've seen and seen some of these other guys that are rated highly, some really good players in that class. You never know how it's going to work out on the next level, but these guys seem like natural fits to me, and they both seem like, to me right now, unless something changes, like surefire one and dones. I mean, you hope you don't jinx something, injuries, and sometimes players struggle. Sometimes it takes them a while, but these guys look the part. They look real to it, in my opinion. And so again, this is an if scenario. We're dreaming right now still until the player makes a pledge and then you get them signed. And and get them on campus, right? But you got them on campus for a visit. You had to do that. You had to spark that. All right, we're 30 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. My Midnight Madness specials pushing 12:30. I'm part of the Razorback football coverage for Hogville.net. I've still got a story to finish up talking about Arkansas's offense tonight. Man, that offense. How about turning it on late again with a bunch of backups? Then you had to score to win it. This offense has moved the ball all year, just shoots itself in the foot and struggled scoring points, but scored enough tonight. And the defense, to me, has been the MVP of this season. If you were picking a coach MVP in a specific unit, offense, defense, or special teams, if you're picking all that, it's Travis Williams and that defense. Great win for Arkansas tonight. It was great knowing that with all that's going on, and it seems really positive right now in basketball recruiting, that the two visitors that were there, Meleek Thomas, Acuff Jr., get to experience that. They not only saw what a Fayetteville and Razorback fan base looks like, but they saw them at their best in a game that Arkansas won. It's always, add something positive to it. Even if it's just icing on the cake and it didn't flip, it didn't lock up the decision. Even if that was needed, great, but I don't think they needed that. It doesn't matter. You want to win. TG had momentum before he got hurt. Yeah, okay. I will say that Taylor Green tonight he had his best night with accuracy as a pocket passer. He had that going for him. He had a touchdown pass dropped. Yeah, he made some mistakes on critical third or fourth down plays where he didn't put the ball where it should be. I think sometimes his reads on the option are a little slow or the wrong read. No player is going to be perfect, but I think he's been too inconsistent. And then the turnovers. Arkansas, no turnovers tonight, 431 yards of total offense. They continue to outgain opponents. Part of that's good defense. Part of it's been really an offense that moves the ball between the 20s or even gets it in the red zone, but comes up short. But yeah, I would agree with that. Taylor Green with a good night. And, of course, I thought Braylon Russell was huge on that final drive, obviously. He had some decent runs before that, just powerful. And then I thought it was interesting, Malachi Singleton, you hated it that Taylor Green had to go out when he did. Arkansas ends up settling for a field goal. He gets in a tough situation down there around the 5-yard line. Coming in, expecting now to finish off the drive with a touchdown. Arkansas kicks a field goal, pulls within a point. But I thought it was interesting after that because they tried to get Taylor Green back in on the next series. He went one play, got hit on a rollout, was just enough to know that he wasn't able to go. But there was enough time in the game for Malachi Singleton to fight through a little bit of struggle on offense, get hit a couple of times. And I thought one of the key play, a couple of things. I thought a key play at the end of the Arkansas's drive before the winning touchdown drive, Arkansas was pinned back, a couple of penalties. They were 3rd and long, and Singleton stepped up and completed a little sideline pass at Arkansas. The back turned upfield and got Arkansas 3 or 4 yards away from a first down, but it gave Arkansas a little bit more breathing room for a punt, and it gave Singleton just a little bit of confidence because he completed a pass. That was his 3rd series to play in. Arkansas gets a good punt, a really good punt, gets a 3 and out, and they get the ball back. And I thought two things again. I thought Satania not letting the ball bound on the punt and not calling a fair catch. He actually toughed up, caught it, and then actually gave Arkansas a few more yards after on the return to get it around the 40-yard line or just outside the 40-yard line. And then Singleton immediately completes his 2nd pass in a row to Satania, gets Arkansas to midfield, and then Braylon Russell busts a couple of big runs. I know I'm doing play-by-play here. I just thought it was very interesting. Sometimes the little stuff adds up to big stuff. And as much as Arkansas struggled to score on offense this year with their starters, I really didn't envision that playing out like it did. Not that I'd given up on it, but just I didn't see how that was going to work. And then they showed us how it was going to work. Yeah, did Tennessee let Arkansas score that touchdown? I hear people saying that. I remember when I was watching it live, I was telling my son, I'm like, man, they got about one guy that looks like he's trying to break on the ball and make a play here to stop it. Some of their guys were turned around worried about what Braylon Russell was doing. I thought Singleton did a good job on the read of just busting it quickly and getting over to the right. But a lot of guys were kind of standing and watching. So it's interesting. Either way, however, whatever dice Tennessee rolled, Arkansas wins the game. That's all on the Hogs. All right, let's get back to basketball because I want to talk about a few things. We had a scare this week with 2026 in-state 5-star Jashawn J.J. Andrews, class of 2026. Again, ESPN ranks him 15th in the country, a 5-star here at Little Rock Christian Academy. I had planned on last week. I do this every year before the basketball season tips up with games. I go around the state and see some of the top players and programs for practice leading up to the season. Last week I was in Jonesboro. Early in the week, I reached out to first-year head coach Tyler Wyman at Little Rock Christian Academy about coming out to practice, and we decided I'd come out on Thursday afternoon. I think they practiced from I don't remember the hours exactly, but we planned it for Thursday. And on Thursday, I get an interesting call from one of my basketball sources talking about assistant coaches making plans to come in to see J.J. Andrews practice. And it was kind of a joke, but he said, I don't know why they're doing that. I mean, he's got the Arkansas offer from Calipari, and he's got this visit coming up later in October. And then about an hour after that phone call, we were kind of laughing about that. Andrews updated for the 4th or 5th time his visit list, and Arkansas has always been on it with that October 18th through 20th weekend. Well, he updated it, tweeted it out, and Arkansas was off of there. Oklahoma had been added. Porter Moser had been in practice on Wednesday. Ole Miss was there. Oklahoma State's coming out next week. Some other SEC schools might be coming out next week. But after that phone call I had, just random, unexpected tip, for what it's worth, and then all of a sudden Arkansas is not on the list. So it was definitely a coincidence. All that was playing out on the same day I was already going out there to cover practice. So I went out there, interviewed Andrews. I tweeted this interview out, a 3-parter that all got tweeted out later that day on Thursday. I also posted that at HogvilleNET. But look, he told me he really prefers taking his visits as many as he can during basketball season so he can go to games. I think there's some stuff there with Arkansas. They want to continue to build that bond. I think he and his family initiated, from my understanding, switching that up. So he's no longer visiting Arkansas in October. He was set to come in the 18th and the 20th. The football Hogs, after a bye week, man, they need that coming up to get healthy. They're back home against LSU, and that was when he was going to be there. So now he's going to look maybe further down the road. Some of his visits are because he doesn't have to make a decision soon. I think to both Oklahoma and Marquette are off in January or later during basketball season anyway. So I think at some point he's going to get it. He told me soon, get it rescheduled, and his preference is maybe to come to see a basketball game at Bud Walton Arena. All right, so I say we avoided a scare. It was a matter of just communication and how things were kind of looking that day. But it's all interesting. I put all that. By the way, here's a guy with Mika Murinen who was just on a visit 2 weeks ago. We've talked about that. I'm going to talk about that again. But those guys were teammates and led Brad Bill to the program's first ever Peach Jam title. It was at the 16U level. And either player could have gotten MVP, in my opinion. Murinen got it. J.J. Andrews, in my opinion, could have got it. But during practice, a lot of drill work, a little bit of 4-on-4. They've got some guys out for football and another guy injured, so they didn't go 5-on-5. But when you put everything together, shooting drills, full court drills, the 4-on-4, Andrews was 8 of 10 from 3. He's a lefty, so his shooting skill continues to emerge. Small sample size, some of that he wasn't being defended, but it's 8 of 10 is better than 4 of 10, and 4 of 10 against real competition is great. 8 of 10 in those scenarios, you like to see it. But he did some other great things like he always does. Good to see him at practice. I want to get back to Murinen because I just tweeted out today. I saw some highlights from some recent competition. He's out at Arizona Compass Prep, class of 2026. Might be, he's considering a strong candidate, I'm told, to reclass of 2025. Top 5 rated 5-star, 6'10", pushing 6'11", from Finland. Was on Arkansas's campus 2 weekends ago when there was no football game. He was able to go to practice. And I shared some intel with you guys just a few days ago in this last segment. I said, look, I was told by someone who talked to him that he said his Arkansas visit's the best yet. And he'd just been on visits to Utah and Michigan. This past weekend, not this one, the one before, because he was on Arkansas's campus 2 weekends ago. So this past weekend, he was scheduled to go to Duke. That didn't happen. Well, he's probably, my guess is if he makes a decision to reclass, usually when those things happen, it's in the springtime after they finish their junior year. Maybe play some spring and summer a little bit, maybe, and then make a decision. That's typically when that happens. And so to expect him to make a decision and sign early, maybe a bit far-fetched. I don't know that I can 100% rule it out, but it seems unlikely. So this thing may take a while. And so who knows what visits he'll have. You know, he was going to visit Kentucky, then decided not to do that now. Again, didn't go to Duke, and bragging about that Arkansas visit as the best he's had. I think that's interesting because when I go back to what Calipari, if he gets Meleek Thomas right now, I'd say Arkansas is not only the leader, but I think they're heading to a commitment. You get that with Acuff, and you're only taking 3 or 4. I think Arkansas, if you can get 4 in this 2025 class, as good as it is, you need to do it. And I think the other thing is, do you do what you did in this last class where you brought over 3 of your 6 before you made that determination? Well, moving forward, I'm only doing 3 or 4, but he brought 3 of 6 with him, and all of them were guard, wing, the backcourt guys. If you get Meleek Thomas with Acuff, you got 2 backcourt guys. I think Amika Murinen, and if he does reclass of 2025, and if you were to add him, he is an interesting guy. I think at the NBA level, he projects as a 3-4. I think at the college game, he's a stretch 4 at minimum, and potentially a versatile enough if he adds a little strength to be on the floor with 2 bigs or help you in a smaller lineup or a 5-out style or some kind of other scenario where he could help you at the 5. That's how versatile this guy is. And I tweeted some highlights from this competition, whatever it was today, retweeted them. Someone put them out. And I've told you guys how good he is, kind of like Lauri Markkanen, another Finnish player who was an NBA All-Star 2 years ago, one of the best players in the NBA for the Utah Jazz now. Similar to him with all that soft skill, shooting skill, his shooting splits in Nike Peach Jam throughout the week of competition, 61% from the field, 50% on volume from 3, 90% from the free throw line. But what I've also said is he's long, athletic, and he is aggressive playing in the paint around the rim, and he'll get put back, lob dunks. He'll defend the rim protector, block shots. But when you saw this little mini reel that I retweeted today, the end of it is him knocking down a 3 on catch and shoot. Everything leading up to that were dunks. He had one in transition with those long strides, and then he leaned in and took off and smashed one. He had another one, a little reverse dunk running baseline, another one off a lob pass. A defender tried to contest, smaller guy, but this guy, and I saw that when I saw him play in person with J.J. Andrews. I saw them together in person for the first time. I've watched a lot of it online. In person for the first time in May in Kansas City. And every game I watched, he continued to make plays around the rim. And I mean, these aren't where he's just on a track where no one's around him, and he's one of those guys that, it shies away from contact but looks great when there's no one around. He challenges dudes, and so you like to see that. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, if you were to, let's say that other things are going to happen in this recruitment of 2025 guys. The Arkansas's got more visitors coming in. But if you do already have Acuff and Meleek Thomas, and even if you have to wait to the spring, if you had a Mika Murinen and he reclasses, you've got everything you need to build around that through the portal and anybody else that comes back off of this team. Those 3, because right now Murinen's top 5 in the 2026 class. As good as that class is, I think because of all the things he brings to the table, I think if he reclasses, he's still going to be a top 10 rated guy. They're going to slot him in there. He's that good. And so, again, we're looking ahead. I don't know what's going to happen with Mika Murinen. Again, I think some of that information, some of that intel was good on him in that visit. And then, we talk about guys like Caleb Wilson. If I'm comparing, I've said Caleb Wilson's one of the 6'9" combo forward out of Atlanta, been really quiet publicly on his Arkansas recruitment. And because I've been told for a while by several folks before, really leading up to when he teamed up with Clutch and Rich Paul, that it looked like Arkansas would have gotten him if he had to make a decision then. I'm not as confident of that now. I still have some people that think Arkansas might still be a leader if they can just get this visit date out publicly and actually get him on campus. I said for a long time it would be post-September, and I was given a couple of dates, and those are still doable, but you just wonder, is that ever? He's on North Carolina's campus this weekend, and he recently visited Kentucky a couple of weeks ago, I think. Seemed like there was a lot of momentum there, and it may still be, and he's just taking visits. So keep it on that. But I said I mentioned several times, I think he's the best two-way player in the country regardless of class, defense, offense. And while that's true, if I'm comparing Mika Murinen to him and even some other highly rated guys just in this 2025 class, offensively, Murinen has a big head start on those guys. A big head start because of his shooting craft. it's not just that he can shoot. He at 6'10", 6'11", he handles the ball well enough. You start thinking about guys like Grant Nelson at Alabama. I mentioned Lauri Markkanen. And then some of the things he does around the rim and protecting the rim and using some quickness. I think he's quicker than Markkanen. And to me, some of those similarities would be like to a Chet Holmgren. And so, I'm mentioning some heavyweight names in terms of guys that get it done and have some length and size on, and sort of these, this new era of what big men can do, or guys that have length and height can do on the basketball court. And so, to me, Arkansas still has a chance not only to have a solid backcourt, and you could wrap it with an Acuff Thomas duo. But Arkansas's got more players coming in for visits. Kingston Flemings, a facilitator first lead guard, top 20 ranked 5-star in that 2025 class out of San Antonio. I think he's visiting Texas Tech this weekend, has Gonzaga, Houston, Texas. Most of these places he's visited. I think he's got a Gonzaga visit later, and then another one, and then the final one so far out of this final 5 is to Arkansas, that 18th to the 20th October, when Arkansas is hosting LSU in football. But if you are, even if you were to be able to get him and Thomas to go with Acuff, I think there's room to get a special frontline player. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think Mika Miernan would check that box. I think a Caleb Wilson, let's see what happens there. Koa Pete's visiting, I think, Arizona this weekend. Remember, we told you right before that weekend that he wasn't probably coming. Well, I had one source saying that he wasn't coming, and I wasn't sold on it because I didn't have it confirmed. It turned out to be true, but that source had also said he plans on rescheduling with Arkansas. I think that's probably a long shot at this point, but we'll see. You never say never when you look at recruiting, especially with John Calipari. And remember, the other visitor for that October 18th through 20th weekend, in terms of how it's scheduled now, we'll see what happens, is Chris Sinek Jr., another top 10 rated 5-star from the 2025 class, another versatile 6'10" guy. A 4-5 and at the college level likely, and then in the pros, he might be a 3-4 combo. So you've still got some frontline guys in the wheelhouse in this recruiting class, some really dynamic players in terms of all these are top 10 rated 5-star guys for the most part, with very few exceptions. I think Kingston Flemings is an exception. Sean Abayev, who's ranked just inside the top 30, Arkansas is coming on there. The Calipari's been out to see him with Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin's been out twice. He told me he wants to visit Arkansas. Auburn's a team to keep an eye on there. He's taken several visits. Auburn's one of those. Some people think Auburn may have the inside track, but a 6'7" point forward, a guy that can play the 1, 2, or 3, just an outstanding player. We'll see what happens with him. And then, there's also, we haven't mentioned his name in a while, Isaiah Seeley, who has the offer, in-state kid, 6'7" combo guard up at Springdale. National top 50-ish rated 4-star. He's taken a couple of visits. We'll see what happens if Arkansas gets him on campus or brings him in for a visit soon. But there's multiple ways to land a 3 or 4 player high school class. And when you watch John Calipari work and do it, I won't be surprised if there's not, a combination of 2 or 3 5-stars and 1 or 2 highly rated 4-star guys that he really likes and sees that can help Arkansas, whether in year 1 for most, if not all of them, then is even potentially in the second year. But mostly with the 5-star guys he goes after, he's telling them, look, let's get this done in a year's time here. Let's help you get ready for the NBA draft and help you, and you help us have a great season. All right, we're almost 50 minutes in. I really wanted to get through recruiting. I think we did that tonight. Again, I'm just going to say, to me, the intel is, I've heard that Meleek Thomas's visit to Arkansas is going better than expected even. And that can always be a loaded statement, right? Like if you didn't think it was going to go well and it's kind of a casual visit, it's a little better than that. No, there were high expectations coming into this. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Arkansas, Calipari has been in the wheelhouse with Meleek Thomas for a long time. I remember when I interviewed him in person again back in May, you could see the genuineness when he talked about Calipari and that he was going to visit Arkansas. He really wanted to. That's finally happened after missing 2 visits. And now I think Arkansas, to me now, I'm closer to where my one source is, that when it does settle, Arkansas is going to get him. And so, I'm never 100% absolute. I'm not going to say for a fact Arkansas gets him, but man, I'm getting close to that. I really am. I think Arkansas is in the driver's seat here. Again, you've got that Kansas State visit upcoming at the end of the month, a few weeks. I think it's again the 25th or the 27th that weekend, and that's the weekend Arkansas hosts Kansas, by the way, on a Friday night in an exhibition game, and then that Saturday Arkansas's football team's on the road against Mississippi State. But that weekend, the way the schedule is now, Meleek Thomas will be at Kansas State. So I see only two things upsetting the apple cart. Some kind of leverage game through NIL that I can't envision or see right now. I'm going to leave that alone, but I think that's one thing that could potentially do it. But outside of that, I think it's Arkansas at this point, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I have the right to change my mind at a later date as things develop, but right now that's where I am with it. 50 minutes in, I'm not going to make it an hour tonight. I'm going to sign off one more time. Congratulations to Sam Pittman and the football Razorbacks and any Razorback anywhere on the world that was tuning in tonight. I know everybody's happy about this win, and I think Arkansas is about to pick up another significant win in basketball recruiting. Again, it's the biggest recruiting weekend for John Calipari since he's been at Arkansas, because if he wraps this up, he packages together the #1 recruiting class in terms of backcourt in the country, and it's going to be comparable to some of the ones he's had in the past. But again, to me, the most pertinent comparison right now is what he just did at Kentucky. To me, that momentum, everybody wants to point to March Madness, but when you're recruiting, you point to what you do for players and what players are able to do in the 1 year you have with them. And they had a lot of success in a backcourt with freshman guys. It's happened before for him. It happened just last year. He's got another freshman backcourt class, again, 3 5-star guys on this upcoming team. I think he had everything in his tool bag to sell this weekend, and Acuff Jr. to me helped with that, and I think it's going to be Arkansas. All right, going to say goodnight now. Going to go finish up this football. Arkansas's offense, going to write about the offense tonight. Got a lot of different players and things to talk about. I want to thank you one last time for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Until next time, see you then.